There is something most people misunderstand about mature men and attraction. They assume it is loud, obvious, or based on physical appearance alone. But in reality, the deeper a man grows emotionally, the quieter his desires become. He stops being impressed by surface-level charm and starts paying attention to something far more subtle, how he feels around a woman when nothing is being said, when no effort is being made to impress, when everything is simply real. And this is where the truth begins to reveal itself. Every mature man, the kind who has been through enough life to understand emotional patterns, is not just looking for beauty or attention. He is looking for ease. He is looking for peace and presence. He is looking for a woman who doesn't create confusion in his mind, but clarity in his heart. Yet most women are never told this. They are taught to perform, to chase, to overthink, to compete for attention, when in reality, the strongest attraction often happens in the absence of trying too hard, because what truly stays with a mature man is not how perfect someone looks, but how naturally he can breathe around her. It's the way she listens without rushing, the way she responds without pressure, the way she carries herself without needing constant validation. These small, almost invisible moments become the foundation of something much deeper than attraction. They become emotional memory. And here is the part that changes everything. A mature man doesn't fall for intensity. He falls for consistency of feeling. If being around a woman feels calm, safe, and real, he begins to lean in without even realizing it. Not because he is being convinced, but because something inside him finally feels understood. So the real question is not about what catches a man's attention for a moment. It is about what quietly stays in his mind long after the moment is gone. Emotional safety is one of those things people often underestimate, yet it sits at the very center of deep connection, especially for mature men. When a man grows older and gains life experience, he stops chasing excitement that feels chaotic and starts valuing peace that feels real. He begins to understand that attraction is not just about chemistry in the moment, but about how calm his inner world feels when he is with someone. Emotional safety is not about agreeing on everything or avoiding disagreement. It is about creating a space where a man feels he does not have to constantly defend himself, explain every thought, or hide parts of who he is just to be accepted. A mature man carries a lot that he doesn't always show on the surface. Responsibilities, pressure, silent expectations, and sometimes even past emotional wounds. So when he meets a woman who doesn't add pressure to that load, but instead brings a sense of ease, something shifts inside him. He starts to relax, not because life becomes easier, but because his emotional guard slowly lowers. And this is not something that happens through big actions or dramatic gestures. It happens in small, quiet moments. The way she listens without interrupting, the way she responds without judgment, the way she allows silence without making it uncomfortable. Many women are taught that attraction comes from being impressive, interesting, or constantly engaging. But with mature men, it often works in the opposite direction. Overstimulation can feel overwhelming to someone who is already mentally full. What he actually notices is emotional steadiness. A woman who does not turn every conversation into a debate. A woman who doesn't make him feel like he is always under evaluation. A woman who understands that sometimes a man just needs to exist without fixing, proving, or explaining everything he feels. Emotional safety also means trust and expression. When a man feels safe, he starts sharing things he usually keeps to himself, not because he is forced to, but because it feels natural. He doesn't fear being misunderstood or judged for his thoughts. He doesn't feel like his emotions will be used against him later. Instead, he feels heard in a quiet, respectful way. And this is where emotional connection begins to deepen without effort. Because when a man feels safe emotionally, he doesn't just open up. He stays open. Another important part of emotional safety is consistency. Mature men pay close attention to emotional patterns. If a woman is warm one day and distant the next without reason, it creates uncertainty. But when her emotional energy is steady, not perfect, but stable, it builds trust over time. And trust is what turns attraction into attachment. Not loud excitement, but quiet reliability. At its core, emotional safety is about one simple feeling. I can be myself here without losing myself, and when a man feels that, he doesn't rush away from it. He moves closer to it, slowly, naturally, and often without even realizing why. Attention is one of those things everyone thinks they understand, but very few people actually practice in a real, meaningful way. In today's world, where phones are constantly buzzing, minds are always half somewhere else, and conversations are often rushed, true attention has become rare. And because it is rare, it has become deeply powerful, especially in how mature men experience attraction. A mature man doesn't just notice what you say, he notices how you are when you are with him. He can feel whether your presence is divided or fully there. He can tell if your eyes are truly listening or if your mind is somewhere else planning the next thing. And when he experiences someone who is fully present, even in simple conversations, it creates a kind of emotional imprint that is hard to forget. Not because it is dramatic, but because it feels real. Attention without distraction is not about staring intensely or performing interest. It is about being genuinely engaged in the moment. It's when a woman listens without interrupting, without rushing to respond, without thinking about what she will say next while he is still speaking. It's when she allows space for his words to land fully before reacting. That kind of presence makes a man feel seen in a quiet but powerful way. For many mature men, life is filled with environments where they are constantly being evaluated, corrected, or expected to perform. Work, responsibilities, and social roles often demand focus outward, not inward. So when they meet someone who gives them undivided attention, even for a short time, it feels like a rare emotional pause. Not because they are being entertained, but because they are being received. And here is something subtle but important. Attention is not just about hearing words, it is about noticing energy. A mature man becomes aware of whether a woman responds only to what is said, or whether she also notices what is felt but not spoken. That deeper layer of attention, where someone picks up on tone, silence, hesitation, or emotion behind words, is what creates a stronger bond. It tells him, you are not just talking, you are being understood. Distraction, on the other hand, breaks connection in very small ways. Checking a phone mid-conversation, glancing around frequently, or mentally drifting away sends a quiet message that the moment is not fully valued. Even if words are polite, the energy feels divided. And mature men are sensitive to that difference. They may not always say it, but they feel it instantly. What makes attention powerful is not intensity, but simplicity. Sitting across from someone who is truly there with you, without hurry, without noise, without emotional fragmentation, creates a sense of emotional grounding. It makes communication feel smoother, safer, and more meaningful. Over time, this kind of attention builds emotional familiarity. A man starts associating that woman with calm focus, with being heard, with feeling mentally unpressured, and that association slowly turns into attraction, not because she is trying to attract him, but because her presence feels complete. In the end, attention without distraction is not about doing more. It is about removing everything unnecessary so the other person feels like they are the only moment that exists right now. And for a mature man, that feeling is rare enough to stay in his memory long after the conversation ends. Calm confidence is one of the most attractive and quietly powerful traits a person can carry, especially in the eyes of a mature man. It is not loud, it is not forced, and it does not try to prove anything. In fact, the more real it is, the less it needs to be shown. And that is exactly why it stands out. In a world where many people feel pressure to perform, impress, or constantly prove their worth, calm confidence feels like a breath of fresh air. It is the energy of someone who is already comfortable within themselves, without needing external approval to feel whole. A mature man is naturally drawn to this kind of energy because he understands effort, struggle, and emotional noise. He has likely experienced people who overcompensate, who try too hard to be liked, or who constantly seek validation through words or actions. Over time, he becomes less interested in intensity and more interested in stability. Calm confidence signals stability. It shows that a woman is not easily shaken by small things, not easily thrown off by uncertainty, and not dependent on constant reassurance to feel secure. But calm confidence is not about being emotionless or distant. It is not about acting superior or detached. It is about being emotionally steady while still being warm and human. It is the ability to sit in a conversation without feeling the need to dominate it. It is the comfort of expressing yourself without fear of judgment and without needing to control how the other person responds. A woman who carries calm confidence does not rush her words, does not panic in silence, and does not over-explain herself just to be understood. She trusts her presence, and that trust changes everything in how she is experienced. For a mature man, this kind of energy creates a sense of ease. He doesn't feel like he is walking into emotional unpredictability. He doesn't feel like he has to constantly manage reactions or decode mixed signals. Instead, he feels a kind of grounding effect. Being around her doesn't feel like a test or a performance. It feels like a steady space where things can unfold naturally. And that feeling is rare enough to be memorable. Calm confidence also shows in how a woman responds to situations that could easily create tension. Instead of reacting impulsively or emotionally escalating small moments, she pauses. She observes. She responds with clarity instead of chaos. This doesn't mean she suppresses her feelings. It means she understands them before expressing them. That emotional maturity is something a mature man notices deeply, even if he cannot always explain it in words. There is also something very attractive about someone who does not compete for attention. Calm confidence doesn't chase validation because it is already rooted internally. This creates a subtle but powerful shift in dynamic. Instead of trying to be chosen, she simply is present, and that presence often makes others lean in naturally without pressure. At its core, calm confidence tells a silence story. I am okay with who I am, and I don't need to prove it. For a mature man, that message feels safe, balanced, and emotionally refreshing. It removes tension from interaction and replaces it with ease. And when something feels easy in a world that often feels complicated, it naturally becomes more desirable, more memorable, and more emotionally magnetic over time. Soft communication is one of the most misunderstood yet powerful forms of emotional connection, especially when it comes to mature men. Many people think communication is only about being clear, honest, or direct. But in reality, how something is said often carries more emotional weight than the words themselves. A mature man doesn't just listen to what is being spoken, he listens to the energy behind it. And when communication feels soft, calm, and emotionally balanced, it creates a completely different level of connection. Soft communication is not about being weak, silent, or avoiding truth. It is about expressing truth in a way that doesn't create emotional pressure or control. It's the difference between saying something to understand each other versus saying something to win, correct, or dominate. A mature man is very sensitive to this difference because he has likely experienced both extremes in life, conversations that feel like arguments and conversations that feel like understanding. Over time, he naturally gravitates toward the latter. When a woman communicates softly, she creates emotional space instead of emotional tension. She expresses her feelings without turning them into accusations. She shares her thoughts without making the other person feel attacked. She allows room for dialogue instead of shutting it down with control. For example, instead of saying something in a way that feels like blame, she expresses it in a way that invites understanding. That small shift completely changes how the message is received. A mature man responds deeply to this kind of communication because it doesn't trigger defense. When communication feels aggressive or controlling, even unintentionally, a man often becomes guarded. He may start explaining himself more, pulling back emotionally, or focusing on self-protection rather than connection. But when communication feels soft and respectful, he doesn't feel the need to defend himself. Instead, he feels safe enough to listen fully and respond honestly. Soft communication also means being comfortable with emotional honesty without overwhelming intensity. It is being able to say, "This is how I feel," without turning it into pressure or expectation. It is expressing concern without controlling the outcome. It is sharing disappointment without making the other person feel like they are being punished emotionally. This balance is what creates emotional maturity in interaction. Another important part of soft communication is tone. A calm tone can completely change the meaning of a sentence. Even difficult conversations feel less heavy when the tone is gentle and steady. A mature man notices this instantly. He can sense when someone is speaking from frustration versus when someone is speaking from understanding, and he naturally leans toward the energy that feels less chaotic and more grounded. Soft communication also includes timing and awareness. Knowing when to speak, when to pause, and when to simply let silence do the work is a powerful emotional skill. Not every feeling needs to be expressed immediately, and not every reaction needs to be amplified. Sometimes the most powerful communication is not forcing a response, but allowing space for reflection. At its core, soft communication is not about control, it is about connection. Control tries to manage the other person's reaction, while soft communication focuses on understanding both sides. And mature men can feel this difference very clearly. When they experience communication that feels safe, respectful, and emotionally balanced, they don't just listen more, they open more. Over time, this creates a deeper emotional rhythm between two people. Conversations stop feeling like battles and start feeling like bridges. And for a mature man, that kind of emotional experience is not just refreshing, it is something he naturally wants to stay close to. Every mature man carries an inner world that is far deeper than what he shows on the surface. It is a space made up of his thoughts, his quiet worries, his private dreams, his past experiences, and sometimes even emotions he has never fully expressed out loud. Most people only see the external side of him, how he behaves, how he speaks, how he handles life, but very few are ever invited into what is happening beneath that surface. And for a mature man, that inner world is not something he shares easily. It takes time, trust, and emotional safety for him to let someone near it. Respecting his inner world means understanding that not everything about him needs to be questioned, fixed, or immediately uncovered. It means accepting that he has layers that unfold slowly, not under pressure. Many women, often without realizing it, try to rush emotional depth. They ask too many personal questions too soon. They try to interpret every silence, or they push for emotional clarity before it naturally arrives. But a mature man does not open up through pressure. He opens up through respect and patience. When a woman respects his inner world, she doesn't treat his silence as distance or his quietness as confusion. She understands that sometimes he is simply thinking, processing, or mentally stepping back to organize his thoughts. Instead of forcing explanations, she allows space. And that space becomes powerful because it tells him one thing clearly: you are not under pressure here. You are allowed to be yourself at your own pace. This kind of respect creates emotional trust in a very natural way. A mature man starts to feel that he doesn't have to hide parts of himself to be accepted. He doesn't feel rushed to reveal everything at once, and he doesn't feel judged for what he hasn't yet shared. That sense of acceptance is rare, and because it is rare, it becomes meaningful. Respecting his inner world also means not trying to control his emotions or his decisions. It is not about trying to shape how he should feel or how he should respond. Instead, it is about allowing him to process life in his own way. A mature man values a woman who doesn't constantly interrupt his internal flow with assumptions or pressure. He values someone who can sit beside him emotionally without needing to rearrange him. There is also a quiet strength in not over-interpreting everything. Not every pause means distance. Not every quiet moment means disinterest. Not every emotional delay means rejection. A woman who understands this brings emotional stability into the relationship, and that stability makes a man feel seen without feeling exposed or judged. When a man feels that his inner world is respected, something subtle but powerful happens. He begins to open up naturally without being asked. He starts sharing more, not because he is pushed, but because he feels safe enough to do so. He doesn't feel like his emotions will be misused, rushed, or misunderstood. Instead, he feels like they will be received with patience and care. At its core, respecting his inner world is about emotional maturity. It is the understanding that real connection is not built by entering someone's mind forcefully, but by being invited into it slowly. And for a mature man, that kind of respect doesn't just create attraction. It creates trust depth and a lasting emotional bond that grows quietly over time. At the end of all of this, the real message is simpler than it first appears. Mature men are not moved by performance, pressure, or perfection. They are moved by how they feel when they are around someone. Whether there is calm instead of chaos. Whether there is understanding instead of judgment. Whether there is space instead of control. Attraction at this level is not something that is forced or manufactured. It grows naturally in environments where emotional ease exists. And that is what most people miss. They try to do more, when in reality, deeper connection often comes from doing less and being more present. If there is one thing to take from this, it is that real emotional influence is not about chasing attention. It is about creating comfort. Not the kind of comfort that becomes boring, but the kind that feels safe, steady, and real. Because when a man feels emotionally safe, respected, and understood, he doesn't need to be convinced to stay close. He naturally wants to. So instead of focusing on how to impress someone, the real shift is in how you show up emotionally. Are you bringing calm or confusion, space or pressure, presence or distraction? These small things shape everything more than most people realize. And over time, they become the difference between a connection that fades quickly and one that stays in memory for a long time. If this resonated with you, don't just watch it and move on. Think about the kind of energy you bring into your own relationships. Because the truth is, attraction doesn't start with them noticing you. It starts with you understanding yourself. And once that changes, everything else changes with it.